Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards Football Sports Talk Radio. I'm your host and producer, Logan Landers. Join me here today to talk about the NFL draft steal, known as Jason Kelce, former now offensive lineman for the Philadelphia Eagles. My guy helped me out today from the Elite Sports and Entertainment Network, Jay McLovin. Jay, how you doing, my friend? And let the people what you learned with doing your research on Jason Kelce. I know you said beforehand you were excited to talk about this. So what do you got?
Yeah, I know in spirit of the way the topic was laid out, it was kind of like, is he the steal of the draft? And yeah, absolutely. I feel like he's the steal of the draft. We go back to 2011 of the draft, and there were so many obvious choices, right? I mean, we're talking J.J. Watt. We're talking Cam Newton. Cam Newton went number one. Just a plethora of guys that came out in that stars. I call it the star. It was a star-studded draft, right?
Yep.
And Jason Kelce, believe it or not, was not one of those stars that they were talking about. Matter of fact, Logan, he was actually ranked number 6 in his positional category. That's how underrated Jason Kelce was. To the point where, he was ranked number 6, so he actually went 6th round, 191st pick exactly. And this is during that lockout time period, so he couldn't even sign his contract until July 25th.
Good point.
If you remember that time period. He had a pretty good combine. He was noted for, or I guess I should say, a lot of people were questioning at the combine his mobility and his mentality. And that's why a lot of people actually had him listed at the combine as a reserve center, not even a starting center. Logan, this is expected to be a reserve center. They said that he would be terrible at run blocking, that he couldn't get his feet set quick enough, that he would be terrible against defensive ends that had fast, quicker moves than he did. And so size and power were also a question as to whether or not he could be a starter. I mean, he wasn't a very big guy, Logan. This is a guy that's 6'3", 280, and in a NFL that boasts 300-pound linemen. So it's not like this guy was the biggest of centers, right?
Mm-hmm.
The first center off the board, believe it or not, Logan, was your Oakland Raiders.
Yep. Was that Rodney Hudson?
Huh? You guys took Steve Wisniewski in the first round.
Oh, I wish it wasn't Steve. Think about it,
Logan. You had the ability through 6 rounds to draft this guy. And talk about screwing the pooch on something, huh?
Hey, Jay.
But in hindsight, nobody knew, right?
No one knew, but also you brought up my team.
I did.
And you guys had a chance to get him too. Y'all had a chance. You got Tyron Smith.
But at the time, our offensive line was so good, honestly. It was good.
Yeah,
that they weren't. I mean, we already had our guy in Federer. I mean, we had our guy. But Oakland was still trying to find itself back then.
Of course. Oh yeah. No doubt. But
just saying.
I'll let you continue.
Now, here's the thing, though. So like I said, he was ranked 6th in the draft. But you know why he didn't do his pro day, Landon? I'm sorry, I won't call you Landon.
Why didn't he do it?
He had his appendix taken out.
Nice.
He had his appendix taken out March 29th of 2011. So, I mean, that's why he wasn't at his pro day, which I think probably hindered him a little bit in that rankings. But honestly, at the same time, though, I don't think people could still get past his combine. And I think that's really why that pro day probably would have offset the combine, which probably would have increased his draft stock at that time. And maybe, just maybe, you may have looked at him. But Steven Wisniewski was actually at the top of his class or at the top of his positional ranking. He was ranked number 1 at the center position, which is why he went in the first round to your Oakland Raiders. The one thing I love about Jason Kelce is he is very heavily involved in the autism world. He has a foundation that is specifically set for autism, and so he does a lot of good work in the autism community. And that's, again, Bart Starr, all the great ones had these types of, Bart Starr was at-risk youth. Jason Kelce is autism. And then, of course, it goes down the line of other great ones that have got, and I believe it was a Walter Payton Award for philanthropy and things like that you get. 6-time first team All-Pro, 7-time Pro Bowler, 193 games played. I mean, the guy was durable. Very, very durable. Now, he did have, and correct me if I'm wrong, Logan, I believe he also did tear his ACL. I think it was his ACL that he tore.
Yes, it is his ACL and his MCL.
And his
in
MCL.
2012.
He tore both of those.
Yeah.
Right? I think that was at the 2013 or 2012.
2012,
right. So, I mean, this is a guy that really jacked up his knee bad, but then still came back and went on to have an amazing season, not a season, but career, I should say, to include a Super Bowl when Nick Foles was the quarterback and Carson Wentz was on the injury reserve list. He has 7 fumble recoveries. So those times when the running backs or the quarterbacks screwed it up, he was there to recover it 7 times. Believe it or not, he was a running back and a linebacker in high school, Logan.
But I would have been scared to see that guy running at me.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine this guy? But Logan, do you know what also a fun fact? It's a fun fact about Jason Kelce. Do you also know what he did in high school, Logan?
No.
Besides playing football?
No.
He played the baritone saxophone.
Okay.
In a symphonic and jazz band. So in 2 different bands he played in, the saxophone. So not only can he play football, Logan, but the man can play the saxophone at a pretty good level. The last couple of things I want to say about him is he's the first rookie in Eagles history to start all 16 games, like you said. And of course, then before he tore his MCL and ACL in 2012. And of course, that would have been the 2011-2012 when he started all 16 games. And then the 12-13 season, I believe, is when he tore those ligaments. The 2013, he was a Pro Football Focus, had him as the best center in the NFL. Now, think about that, Logan. This is a guy that's coming off a tore MCL and ACL. And then the very next season, he goes on to be the number 1 rated center in the NFL.
Yeah.
Is that crazy? To me, that's crazy. And he beat the Patriots, like I said, in 2017, and he got Run Blocker of the Year. Now, these are 2 things I want you to think about for a second. I told you at the very beginning of all this that they said at best he would be a reserve center, that he lacked size, he lacked power, he lacked run blocking abilities and handling defensive end with swim moves and stuff. But then he goes on the next year after that evaluation to not only be the best center, but to go on to win a Super Bowl and get Run Blocker of the Year. Now, I always say the best form of revenge is success. And that's exactly what Jason Kelce did to his critics, is make them look silly with his success.
Yeah. And, when I was looking up Jason Kelce, I feel like we have to give credit, Jay, to Howard Mudd, who was the offensive line coach at the time. And when I read this, I was like, you know what? This does make sense. This is a really good comparison. Jay, he compared, he was going to make Jason Kelce into the mold of another very well-known offensive lineman by the name of Jeff Saturday.
Yeah.
So, like I say, and obviously that he knew Saturday very well, coached him at Indy for many, many years. But that's the thing, too, is, I mean, he was drafted so late. Like you said, no one thought that Kelce would have the career he had, really. I mean, the guy who is drafted late, we've talked about it before on the show. If you're drafted, after, usually the 4th or 5th round, like, okay, yeah, it's a guy he'll fight for a roster spot, but is he really going to get on the team? Is he really going to make a big impact? I mean, he showed that pretty much day one, right? He went in to training camp, and by the 3rd game, he was already starting. He's already taking first team snaps. He became, like you said, the first rookie in Eagles history to start all 16 games at center. That's no joke for a guy who was coming out of Cincinnati, which we know isn't a football powerhouse per se, but a guy who was drafted in round 6, pick 191, a pick also that was given up by a team who I know that they wish they had it back, and that's the Baltimore Ravens.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I know they kicked themselves, but a guy who, as you mentioned, won a Super Bowl, 6-team first team All Pro, 7-time Pro Bowler, for God's sake, and played in 193 games, Jay, and he started in all 193 games. Like you said, he's done some great philanthropy work outside of the game. We also know he has a successful podcast with his brother Travis in the Heights, or excuse me, New Heights. And he's just, like you said, a guy who didn't have a lot of hype around him. Just really just worked until he made his presence felt. And like you said, the fact that he did get a major injury, tearing his MCL and ACL early on in his career, for him just to come on back and win, run blocker of the year, as well as many other awards and accolades throughout his career, made LaShawn McCoy look great. Helped him reach his heights, and then becoming one of the faces of the Eagles, you could say, as an offensive lineman, as a center, is incredibly impressive. And Jason Kelce, man, just gotta tip the hat to him with what all he's done, how well he played, and he just retired not too long ago, Jay, and man, you could tell that he didn't really that he was passionate about the game he loved, that he would play until his body couldn't anymore. And we know that, in the past couple of years, he had been kind of, maybe hinting at it, maybe retiring and whatnot, and calling it quits there. But he kept hanging around, kept playing, and, ultimately said, you know what, I want to hang out with the wife and kids, enjoy the rest of my time here, away from the game of football, on the field, and just enjoy life. And I mean, that's the thing with Jason, and also with Travis too. Whenever Travis retires, I feel like we're always going to hear from those guys.
Oh yeah,
like
oh yeah.
I mean, let's also not forget, you said he played. He was involved in some musical instruments in high school, and Jay, we know that Jason and a couple of the Eagles, they also did some music, right? They did the Christmas album called The Philly Special Christmas. Who can forget that?
Yeah.
With Lane Johnson and a couple other guys. We've seen him do some work in some wrestling before. Showed up and made some couple appearances. And, we know he's involved with, the major networks out there and giving his analysis. And very impressive on that also. He's not like you can tell he's not phoning it in, that he's very well educated and he knows what he's talking about. But yeah, Jason Kelce, man, just a very talented player, an awesome person away from the game too, it seems. And just someone who I know that fans in Philadelphia respect. You don't really ever hear a bad word out of him, which is kind of crazy to hear for Philly. But it seems like all in all that this guy was universally loved and respected, and also feared. And that's about all you can ask for from football players. Your teammates and your fans respect you, that your opponents fear you, and most of all that you have some fun away from the game, and you're a good guy, which Jason Kelce, it seems like he fits the mold for all of that. And just it was fun to watch his career. Like you said, came from nothing really, in terms of not a lot of expectations, to becoming, a lot of people say maybe the best offensive lineman in Eagles history. So it's just super impressive. And, it was fun to watch him play and, stifle our team's defense for all those years. I know, especially you.
Yeah.
I know, but it's been fun though. And guys, want to hear from you in the comments. What were your thoughts on Jason Kelce? Was he the steal of that 2011 draft, which, like Jay said, was absolutely loaded? They had a lot of really good talent in that draft, and somehow, I don't know how, but somehow this guy managed to fall many rounds into the Eagles' laps per se, and so he can put up a career which will no doubt have him in Canton with a bust here in just a couple of years, I'm sure, with how well he's done. I'm sure we'll have his number retired in Philly, so on and so forth. because of just how good he was. But hey, Jay, I appreciate you, my friend, coming on the show today, talking about Jason Kelce, how good of a player he was, and the career he had both on and off the field. I've been your host and producer, Logan Landers. Guys, once again, be sure to like, follow, share, and subscribe on our Facebook and YouTube channels for more great content. And until next time, we will talk to you again on another live episode. We'll see you soon.